Hey there, folks. Welcome to this week's astrological report. This is for October 7 through October 13 of 2025. Hope you're doing well. So this week it looks like we have a mixed bag of aspects going on, some challenging aspects and some easy ones. Plus we have planets scattered all throughout the zodiac showing a lot of different influences for the week. We are coming off of that Aries full moon that was exact yesterday. The moon is still in Aries, so it's still kind of full moon vibes today as well. But the moon is waning off of Aries. It's going to wane all through Taurus, all through Gemini, and all through Cancer for this week. As far as major aspects go, it looks like we have Mercury in conjunct to Uranus. Mercury is squaring Pluto. That's exact right now as I'm making this. We also have Venus making a sextile to Jupiter. That's exact by tomorrow on October 8. Venus is in conjunct to Chiron, October 9. The Sun is in conjunct to the North Node of Destiny by October 10. Venus is opposing Saturn. That's one of the more serious aspects of the week. That will be on October 11. And then by next week on Monday, Venus ingresses Libra. That's going to be a pretty big change for everything Venus. Venus will then oppose Neptune, and we have Pluto stationing direct, exact on Monday, October 13. However, I would consider Pluto stationary, the influence of the stationary, all of this week, all of next week, and pretty much all of October. It's really not moving. It's extra powerful. And so we're going to be dealing with a lot of intensity and a sense of transformation for October. And it's kind of being activated mentally right now with Mercury. So I'll be explaining that as I go throughout the report. As always, check the description. You have a list of aspects for the week with timestamps so you can follow along. Let's just get right into it. Looking here at the chart. Now that we have Mercury in Scorpio, dynamics are starting to change here. Because if we look at where Venus is, now Mercury and Venus no longer have a mutual reception. However, Venus in Virgo is being ruled by Mercury, but Mercury in Scorpio is being ruled by Mars. So Mars is becoming a lot stronger for the influence of everything. Plus the Sun, currently halfway through Libra, that's being ruled by Mercury. No, I'm sorry. Sun is being ruled by Venus in Virgo, and then Venus being ruled by Mercury, Mercury being ruled by Mars. So all of this over here, Venus, the Sun, Mercury, all being ruled by Mars, plus the moon today, and that full moon was being ruled by Mars in Scorpio. So really, Mars is kind of in charge of a lot here. Mars is still leading everything, and Mars went through that square with Pluto. Now Mercury's going through that square with Pluto. So one by one, these planets will come into Scorpio and square Pluto. Plus Pluto being stationary, Pluto's the big theme of the week in Aquarius, the group, the friends, the community, social activity. All this is going to be super amplified and pretty intense for the next few weeks. Venus crossed over that south node, so we've kind of been in some karmic territory as well. I think the markets are going to most likely be reacting to some of these changes. However, it's only temporary because Venus is going to be reaching Libra by next week, which makes Venus very strong as well. So, but right now, the fact that Venus in Virgo is being ruled by Mercury and Mercury is squaring Pluto, that could affect the markets today. I would imagine it could be a down day. But, overall, the markets have been at all-time highs. They just don't want to go down. They've been doing really good. But we could see some adjustments, some temporary adjustments for the week ahead until next week. Okay, so looks like let's just get started on the day by day here. So Tuesday on October 7, the first aspect was Mercury in conjunct to Uranus. This is significant as well because Uranus in Gemini, third house territory, Gemini, it's the mind, it's the streets, it's the local environment, and it's being ruled by Mercury. So this is one of the most intense aspects for the day, is this Mercury in conjunct to Uranus and squaring Pluto. So Mercury, everything mercurial is kind of in a very intense way right now. So that could show that there could be some isolated traffic incidents. It could even be a major incident, with traveling or transportation, but it doesn't always manifest in some big event. It can just be localized, like several different localized accidents and things around the world. And in fact, there was just a helicopter crash in Sacramento last night. So Mercury deals with traveling, transportation, and Mercury ruling the streets plus Pluto stationing direct can amplify the local environment, the streets, the community aspects going through a lot of intensity. And Mercury is also communication. So Mercury ruling Gemini, and also in conjunct to Uranus, there could be a lot of technical issues in some cases, glitches, technology problems that could happen today into tomorrow, perhaps, or anytime throughout the week. I often just show you like the one day that these aspects are perfect, but really there's an orb of influence that lasts more than one day. So that's why sometimes I'll predict something on one day and it'll happen like a couple days later because of the orb of influence. But still, it's very strong today. And there's now that Mercury's in Scorpio as well, just next to Mars. This is a really intense mental energy. Now, Scorpio is a water sign, so it tends to be more on an emotional level, but Scorpio likes to control things. It doesn't want to be exposed totally. There's a lot of things that are under the surface. It's more covert and stealthy as well. But because it is connecting to Pluto in the group and the community, it could still show a lot of intensity with communications, words that are being spoken. Mercury next to Mars, that's pretty fiery and passionate words. That's actually a great placement for debate. So people tend to, communicate in a stronger way, a more direct, kind of harsher way, especially with the square to Pluto. So be cautious of that. People could be really amped up with their opinions, their beliefs, and what they're saying. So again, it could affect transportation, traveling issues, the local environment. The streets could be a little more chaotic, intense, and technology, as I said, and also money. Scorpio is a financial sign. It deals with investments, other people's money, other people's resources, and things like that. Mercury is in a last quarter square with Pluto, so it actually has a connection to when Mercury was conjunct Pluto, when it was in Aquarius earlier in the year. So it's things of the past as well that are very strongly connected to what's on the mind and how people are communicating. But it's also about getting down to truth, getting down to the bottom of things, and really it's more of a raw communication style now. It's less polite. We still have the sun in Libra, so it's still the season of trying to be diplomatic and graceful and trying to find some compromise and some balance. But at the same time, because Mars is in charge of everything, it still leads to this more direct, raw, intense side of the zodiac. So, it could be edgy, could be intense. If you're feeling that, just understand why. And then just be extra careful of words and getting into arguments or debates with people. It's probably not worth it. All right, so again, that's one aspect. It's playing out right now, first thing in the morning, but I think it's going to be relevant for the next few days. And then today we also have the moon in conjunct to the south node. So the moon coming off that full moon, still a lot of light on the moon. The moon is approaching Chiron today, so that's going to be a big influence as well. It could be highlighting a lot of sensitivities and vulnerabilities, insecurities, wounds and injuries for certain people as the moon is moving towards Chiron. Plus, we also have Jupiter building up through the last Jupiter's going to get to 25 degrees by November and station retrograde by November 11, but it's now within 2 degrees of a square to Chiron. So that's still pretty tight. And I think as the moon goes through the conjunction of Chiron today and squares Jupiter, that's going to kind of activate that square between Jupiter and Chiron. And that's where Jupiter, anything that Jupiter touches, it tends to expand that. So as it squares Chiron, it's going to expand this Chiron spot here where there's injuries and accidents for people, vulnerabilities. It can be internal stuff, how people feel about themselves, their confidence level, a lot about the self. And the moon, the circumstances and the feelings are going through that today. So I do think it's a sensitive day for some people, or it could bring up, these deeper issues for people that will be expanded on a personal level throughout the fall months, next couple months. So today really it doesn't have any easy aspects. There's just in conjunctions, squares, and a conjunction to Chiron before the moon changes signs later on today. But the moon is also in conjunct to Venus today as the day goes on here. Let me move this forward. So moon in conjunct to Venus, the feelings, the mood, kind of on two different pages from desire. They're not really helping each other out too much. Venus over here is still in a very practical way. Now it's really in its debilitation because it doesn't have that help from Mercury. Venus does have help from Jupiter, so that could help moderate some of the downside for Venus. It could bring it could definitely help the situation as the week goes on. That's going to be exact by tomorrow. It's already pretty tight, so I think Jupiter can help Venus, relationships and some money stuff, but still, the fact is everything still leads to Mars and Scorpio, very powerful, intense placement, and Venus is technically in debilitation, no longer in mutual reception. So again, it's kind of a mixed bag. We have the moon at odds with Venus. We have the moon with Chiron squaring Jupiter, but also we have that sextile from Venus to Jupiter. So in some ways it can feel good. In some areas of life it can be supportive and an easier situation. And then in other areas of life it can be more challenging for some people. But moon and Venus on two different pages, it's like what we need is not really supportive of what we desire and how we're feeling versus relationships. So it's kind of an off day, really, with these aspects. Generally speaking, of course, not every single person has to be, affected by this. It all depends on your chart, as I say, every week. And yeah, moon square Jupiter. So the mood, the feelings, the circumstances are going to probably get pretty big as the day goes on here. This is about midday, but it'll affect things for a few hours on either direction. So moon square Jupiter, things are out of balance. Things are big. The moon still has a lot of light on it, squaring Jupiter. So it comes back to self versus safety, security needs, the homeland, your home and family dynamics could be a little bit over the top today as the day goes on. But I don't know, with that Chiron wrapped up into everything, be careful of accidents, injuries, watch what you're doing, pay attention to what you're doing. Because I still think that even if it doesn't manifest in some major event in the world, this is still prime for accidents and injuries with this Mercury squaring Pluto at the same time as the moon is next to Chiron squaring Jupiter. So just be extra cautious, pay attention to what you're doing, and I think that'll help a lot. So the moon's going to be in Aries for most of the day until this evening. It's going to cross over that aspect. And it looks like by Tuesday night, the final aspect, or change rather, will be the moon ingressing into Taurus. But this is also going to continue to activate this Pluto that is very strong for everybody, because right as the moon comes into Taurus, it's going to start squaring Pluto. But this will be the beginning of a change of dynamics, a change of mood and feelings for the next 2.5 days. And this will be mostly for Wednesday, because this change will happen pretty late on Tuesday night. It'll be Wednesday morning for some people, but if you're on the West Coast, the change is on Tuesday night. But let's look at this for Wednesday, October 8th. And we continue to have some challenging aspects for Wednesday. Tuesday might be maybe one of the better days. We have a lot of easier aspects for Thursday, but in the meantime, we start things off here on Wednesday, October 8, with the moon squaring Pluto. So now that the moon is in Taurus, it is exalted. That's a good place for it to be. It just has to get past this square and this opposition going on here. But the moon in Taurus is ruled by Venus, and it's not going to be the best exalted moon in Taurus this time around because it is being ruled by Venus in debilitation. Now, when Venus is in Libra and the moon goes through here, that'll be a totally different dynamic in a month. But this one is just not as easy. However, the moon eventually will make a trine to Venus, and that should be helpful in a couple days. But in the meantime, we have intense circumstances, intense feelings. Definitely going to highlight financial dynamics for Wednesday, Taurus versus Scorpio, and the moon building up the opposition to Mercury. That's kind of a T-square going on. It's not perfect, but it's a T-square between Mercury, Pluto, and the moon. The circumstances, the mood, the feelings. A lot of this is going to play out in the overnight hours of Tuesday into Wednesday morning. So again, it connects to Pluto in Aquarius, the group, the community activity that's really amplified all week long and all next week. So of course, those are those cities that are going through a lot of political intensity with the group. Really highlighted the next few days with this. And then the opposition, moon to Mercury. Mercury still within orb of that square, 1 degree, square Pluto. So I think it's still pretty intense mentally and a lot of agitation. So feelings and circumstances opposing Mercury, the mind and the heart, they're opposing each other, but also really activating this need for communication and intense thought and wanting to get down to the bottom of things and truth and understanding on a deeper level. But the moon here in Taurus shows that people want to kind of have some more like peace and harmony and some beautiful situations and environments. Usually with the moon in Taurus, it shows that people want other people to feel comfortable. We don't want to create conflict and issues, but because the moon is connecting to Scorpio and Pluto and Aquarius, we may not have a choice but having to deal with some intense feelings and situations and people if we're involved in group activity. I would personally avoid group activity late tonight on Tuesday into Wednesday with this dynamic playing out. But if you have to be involved in something, just understand why there could be that edginess or the intense undercurrents going on because of this background vibe. Okay, and then looks like we do have one supportive aspect here, and that's the Venus sextile Jupiter. I wish I could say it's like super awesome and super abundant. It's kind of, I mean, it's okay. At least Jupiter is exalted here. The moon is exalted, but Venus is not. Venus is a little bit weaker, plus in eclipse territory next to the South Node. But, there's 3 difficult aspects for the day on Wednesday, and then this one easy aspect of a sextile. So check your chart. Do you have any personal planets at 23 degrees of the water or the earth signs? If you do, then you are getting the aspect of Jupiter and Venus at the same time. And it could especially be nice for you if you have an actual sextile in your chart in this exact same spot of the zodiac, 23 degrees of Virgo and 23 degrees of Cancer. If you do, then you're getting a rare Jupiter transit that only happens every 12 years, and Venus in the temporary is connecting to that. That could make it even better for some better support in some way. Could be about work. Venus is in the work territory. A lot of people have changed jobs, going through a lot of work adjustments. There could be something new that's an opportunity for some people around work. It could be about money, a financial dynamic that's helpful for some people. It could be something about real estate, property, or home and family stuff that's a little bit better in a temporary way. and maybe health. I think this is more on a material level of money or work or something like that, but this is also health territory that's going through eclipses, and a lot of people's health are going through major changes. So, yeah, there's a little bit of some help here for Wednesday with this sextile. And then the moon is opposing Mars, so there's still a really intense emotional background going on all day long as the moon is building up to this opposition with Mars. And that's going to be in the evening, Wednesday evening and Wednesday night when it's perfect. So again, Scorpio tends to do things under the surface. It's not always visible. It's more stealthy and covert. But it could still show because it's connecting to the moon and Pluto and the outer life. So it could just really amp up people's emotions and feelings. It could amp up people's instincts and impulsiveness. I think with Scorpio and Mars being so strong, it does tend to be more in control, but it could still kind of have this impulsiveness for some people that are unconscious and just like, really affected by things. So in that case, you'd be wanting to be a little more careful of your emotional responses and action going on here and what's driving you, what's pushing you, to be taking action in this moment on Wednesday night. And that is the last aspect of the day for Wednesday, October 8. Moving this forward, we get to Thursday on October 9. The moon is still in Taurus, ruled by Venus, and now the moon is actually aligning in a better way. So this is one of the days that have easier aspects than other days of the week. There's still a few challenges here and there, including the moon in conjunct to the sun. So this is where the moon and the sun, the inner and the outer, they're on two different pages. The sun here in mid-Libra is focused on relationships, other people, trying to be diplomatic and graceful, trying to be compromising, being more intellectual and communicative. And the moon here is more about the physical life, physical needs, resources, what we need to feel comfortable, safe, and secure. But the good news about this is both the moon and the sun are both being ruled by Venus in Virgo. So it still comes back to this practical side of life, work, service, money and resources and things that are going through adjustments and changes. It's just more analytical and practical. But because the moon is building up a trine to Venus, that's where, maybe it's a little bit better of a day, a little bit of an easier day for some people, especially if you have a lot of earth and water placements in your chart. And the moon is also aligning with the nodes of fate at the same time. So it looks like it is a fateful day, and things that are happening could be more important than normal. And also the moon is connecting to Jupiter and Venus. So this could be one of the better days here as the day goes on for Thursday. That's going to come in, it looks like, in the afternoon hours. Yeah, about right there. So it's kind of reactivating that Venus-Jupiter sextile, and then the moon, the circumstances, the feelings. So that is a lot more helpful, it looks like, for Thursday afternoon for people, or Thursday evening, depending on where you live. And it's wrapped up in fate and destiny for whatever's happening. It could be a lot more physical, materialistic, money, resources, more support in some way if you need it. Again, if you have planets around 23, 24 degrees of the earth and water signs, you're probably more likely to benefit from this than other people. But this is more likely to show people are more satisfied or content with something going on because the moon is trine Venus. could be better for relationships as well. I mean, the moon being ruled by Venus, Venus being ruled by Mercury. Mercury's now starting to separate from that square to Pluto, but it's still right next to Mars. I mean, ultimately, that's the whole week, is everything comes back to Mercury, Mars. And that's much more of an intense mental state for people, no matter what's going on. But this is a temporary aspect that can be helpful with Moon trine Venus and sextile Jupiter. So we got, more pleasure available, perhaps. There's still going to be some limitation to this because Venus in this spot of Virgo, not a sign that it likes to be in, ruling the moon. But, what's available, we can tend to get more in this dynamic. So money, resources, pleasure of different types, home, family, energy, and something that feels better around work or something more practical with work, service, and health life. And maybe about money too. Okay, and then the moon is sextile Saturn at the same time as the day goes on, right after all those aspects. That tends to show emotions are more stabilized. People feel more mature in that moment. It's a little more serious and dry, but people's emotions tend to be reasonable, generally speaking, of course. And then Venus is making an in conjunction to Chiron. And this is why I was saying it's like a mixed bag. It's like we're not just getting one thing. There's all these different aspects that are really influencing people at the same time. Because this one is a little more challenging. Venus in conjunct to Chiron. How people feel about relationship or value or themselves, having to make a lot of adjustments between a sensitive spot that's being highlighted this week. Again, it can be vulnerable. It can be insecurities for some people, just how people feel about their independence, their freedom versus relationships, work and service, and money dynamics. So that's playing out in the evening hours of Thursday. One of the only challenging aspects besides the moon in conjunct to the sun. And then the moon is going to change signs. So by late Thursday night, the mood is going to really start to change as the moon will ingress Gemini and be conjunct Uranus. So things really do change for late on Thursday. Really late. For some people, it's early morning Friday, but on the West Coast, it's Thursday night. And now that the moon is in Gemini, it's going to be here for the next 2.5 days. It's changing the mood, the feelings, the circumstances. Now the moon is being ruled by Mercury, back to this Scorpio, this deeper dynamic. And Mercury next to Mars still has a lot of mental intensity and things really heated and powerful. It's also resourceful. Don't get me wrong. Mars is still in a very powerful spot for people. It can show people are more determined, resourceful, more powerful to get what they want, for good or bad. But there's a lot of things that are happening under the surface that not everybody sees what's going on here. And ultimately with Mercury next to Mars, it still shows kind of this intense communication, this more raw, powerful communication that's available for people. And now with the moon coming into Gemini, it puts more emphasis on the need for communication and a variety of different activities. Normally, the moon in Gemini wants to be more lighthearted and playful and witty and clever and, not too serious. But in this case, it leads to a lot more seriousness. Plus, the moon going through this Uranus conjunction activates the minor grand trine on the world point dynamic of the world changing, the world restructuring itself in this process through 2025 into 2026. So it's a lot more serious than normal. But it also amps up a little bit of this rebelliousness where Uranus is, the local streets, people's mind and communications and how they're thinking about things gets more raw, gets more intense. And there could be a lot more changes, volatility going on from this point forward, late on Thursday night into the early morning hours of Friday with this dynamic. Some disruption, some changes, some surprises are possible in some scenarios. But at the same time, as we get into Friday morning, October 10, the moon is trine Pluto. So it's really, again, activating that minor grand trine on the world point with Aquarius, the power within the group and the community, intense dynamics within the community, the local streets, the mind, communications, all really being amplified here. So it's circumstances are really connecting to what the future is all about. Another round of that feeling of the future is showing that we all have to accept because there's no going backwards. We're dealing with the past. We are dealing with the past from now until let's just say the next 6 months. Like there's a feeling that the past is still kind of holding on tight as these planets begin to retrograde back into their old positions. Uranus will come back to Taurus. Neptune will come back to Pisces. Saturn is already back in Pisces, so it's like we're not fully done with the past just yet. We still have more work to do. We still have more endings to go through when it comes to the past era that we've been connected to before we're fully in this future era that's trying to be established. But we're feeling a little bit of that future here as we come into Friday and what's going on. So now we still have Venus and Earth, but we've kind of lost a little bit of some stability with the moon in Taurus. Now things are just much more changeable, a little more scattered and all over the place as the moon goes through this position here. And then for the rest of the day, there's only 3 in conjunction, so it doesn't look like the easiest day here, as the moon will be in conjunct to Mercury, and then in conjunct to the north node of destiny, and then in conjunct to Mars. So the moon is at odds with Scorpio because Gemini and Scorpio are so very different. Gemini is more about the mind, the mental energy, being flexible and adaptable and changeable. Scorpio is deep and fixed and serious and intense. And Gemini likes to be more lighthearted and playful. So we're having to make a lot of adjustments between this Gemini side that is more lighthearted and playful and scattered to this more intense, deep side that everything kind of leads back to, of what's under the surface. And so that just shows a lot of adjustments that are taking place. Some irritations are taking place on Friday for people. But the sun in conjunct to the north node, we're also having to make some sort of an adjustment, perhaps, between relationships, how we're thinking about things and how we're trying to balance out certain thoughts and ideas or situations that will affect our future. So we might have to make an adjustment for our future in some way based on what's showing or coming out on Friday. I don't think it'll affect every single person, but that's kind of the background vibe. And then the moon in conjunct to Mars. So again, adjusting between Gemini and Scorpio in a lighthearted mood versus an intense, powerful, edgy placement. And that is the last aspect for Friday, October 10. So moving this forward here, we get to Saturday on October 11. And the moon is halfway through Gemini as we start the day off, and there's a lot of challenging aspects and a couple easy ones. So the first aspect is the moon T-square the nodes of fate on Saturday. So it's a fateful day. The world is at a fateful crossroads. Things that happen could really affect the future in a much more significant way than normal. We might have to make some decisions about something here because we're at a crossroads. And this is also the day where Venus is opposing Saturn. So it's quite serious about money and resources. The markets, well, this is Saturday, so the market's closed. But more so than about relationships. This is a serious dynamic. Venus opposite Saturn. There might be a sense that people, it doesn't want to be as social. Usually with Venus in this position with Saturn, it can be more inward, socially, not as outward, not as happy. Plus the moon here is kind of at odds with both Venus and Saturn as well, the mood and the circumstances. So people might just feel more private, more inward, more distant, more serious in relationship. Preferences could also be a little more serious in this dynamic on Saturday. And now, if you have something planned socially on Saturday, doesn't mean it has to be terrible, so don't get too worried about it. But if you are, in a social situation and it feels a little bit off, or people's mood is a little bit different, then you know why. You know what the background vibes are here of why that is. But it's a turning point for Venus in relationships as well, about something going on certain individual levels. So don't get too upset, even on a personal level, even on a romantic level. If something feels off on Saturday with somebody, it's just this kind of more of a heavier, serious vibe. A lot of times with the opposition with Venus-Saturn, there can be a distance, either literally, you could be separated from someone you love or something of pleasure, or it could just be, a feeling of distance in the relationship of some kind on Saturday. Or there could be something about serious commitment, serious, developments that are happening on a relationship level or even a financial level. But it's really going to be a turning point for Venus, because once Venus gets past this, then Venus is going to be ingressing into Libra by next week, which is a very strong spot for Venus to be in. And that will change the dynamic of the focus with the Sun in Libra. Then it'll be ruled by Venus, and it won't go back to the Mars in Scorpio. But first, it feels like we have to get past something a little bit heavy or a little bit serious in relationship and the mood about it all before that new dynamic next week comes in. So maybe people won't be in the mood for too much fun, this weekend or something like that. That's always possible as well. And it's kind of a tough love aspect, but it's also a culmination aspect of something. It also comes back to when Venus was conjunct Saturn. This is like the fullness of that, the culmination part of it, where something is also showing a result of something that's been in the works for a while about relationship or money. And it could very well talk about work, how people feel about work, or a work dynamic that's starting to change now based on the eclipses in Virgo and things that have been happening. Now there could be a turning point about something with work in some cases. So just know it's a really serious aspect with love and pleasure, and maybe it could show something a little more restrictive, in some cases. All right, and then the moon actually does align with the sun. So this is part of the lunar cycle where the moon and the sun are trying each other. So that's good that this is happening at the same time. That can show something a little bit better than the normal Venus opposite Saturn, because the moon and the sun are trying. So that shows a little more cooperation that could be going on despite the tough love vibes in the background, or this more serious love vibe. If it's not tough love, it's more like, okay, let's not mess around with relationship or love. It doesn't want to just be fun and playful. It wants to be a lot more serious about something for the future. So it either wants to be serious and take something to the next level in a relationship, or maybe it doesn't want to move forward with it if it can't be something more committed and more serious. All right, and then the moon is also sextile Chiron. So whatever's happening, maybe it can help people feel a little better about themselves. Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. It'll be Saturday night for some people. And then, however, the moon enters some tough territory with Saturn and Venus. There'll be a T-square, actually. The moon will square Venus and square Saturn late on Saturday night, October 11. before it changes signs. So this is going to be, it'll be the evening hours on the West Coast and super late on the East Coast and really early in the morning in Europe, October 12 on Sunday morning. But just know late on Saturday night, again, I don't feel like it's the best vibe for social activity. People just might be more inward, more private, more distant. The moon squaring Venus shows there's a little bit of a clash here on what people desire and how they're feeling. Plus, the moon is still being ruled by Mercury in this deeper spot next to Mars. There's still a little bit of an edginess below the surface that's boiling up and intense, and powerful. And then the moon squaring Saturn at the same time feels a little bit heavy, a little bit restrictive from behind the scenes as well. Some pressure, some weight that's going on. So it doesn't feel like the funnest social time for Saturday night. If you have to be out, if you already have a plan, then do what you got to do and to keep your expectations in check. I think this will affect people mostly that have later degrees, around 25, 26, 27, 28 degrees of the mutable placements. So Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And then, that's kind of like a turning point because the moon will then ingress Cancer late on Saturday. So let me look at this. Yeah, it's going to be super late for everybody. For the West Coast, it's like right before midnight that the moon changes signs. And for other people, everywhere else, it's super early on Sunday, October 12th, that the moon changes. But this will be right about here, 11:37 roughly on the West Coast. Moon ingress Cancer for a change of mood and circumstances for the next 2.5 days. Now things get a lot more sensitive. The moon is strong here, but it's also picking up on the square to Neptune now, has to make inconjunctions to the outer planets. So this is for, I'm just going to start talking about it for the following day on Sunday, October 12. We start things off with the moon in Cancer. It's much more emotional, much more sensitive, much more inward. Plus the Venus is still opposing Saturn, before it changes signs. So again, vibes are just more private, more inward now, more guarded and protective. A little bit of some emotional confusion right off the bat for some people with the moon square Neptune. Some uncertainty could be in the air. And it's like the feelings, the mood is totally at odds with the world of what's going on in the outer life with Aries. So again, people want to be more inward, more private, more guarded, and indulging in safety, security, and comfort, and what they enjoy privately for early Sunday. And for the next 2.5 days, the moon will be in Cancer now. So there's just 3 aspects. Starts off with the moon square Neptune. Again, a lot of emotional sensitivity, confusion, uncertainty. So don't get too wrapped up in anything, late on Saturday night into Sunday morning. Let it pass. Give it a few hours before, you get carried away with how you're feeling about something. It's a little more challenging to trust your intuition during this aspect, because you could be wrong. Now, normally I say trust your intuition, and, that's safe to say, pretty much always. But when I see moon square Neptune this tight, people need to be careful of creating an issue that's not there as well. So just kind of like, try to let it go if you can for a little bit, and then come back to it and reassess it a little bit later, and you might feel a little bit differently. The moon is also in conjunct to Pluto, so the circumstances, the feelings, the mood, totally at odds with that group, the community, this really powerful, intense transformation going on in the world, socially, politically, all that kind of stuff. People generally don't want to be a part of that early morning on Sunday, even late Saturday night. And there is one easy aspect. The moon begins to trine Mercury as the day goes on for Sunday. That's going to be later on, as the moon is here. Yeah, that's going to be actually the afternoon, evening hours of Sunday. That's where a little better of a feeling can come in, better for communication, but it's also like what's unspoken, reading between the lines. These are water signs, so it's like it's good for picking up on people's body language and what's unspoken and kind of understanding things that are unspoken. But it can also be good for, speaking as well and communicating your feelings in a more private setting, private way on Sunday evening, Sunday night. That's the last aspect for Sunday until we get to Monday on October 13. And there is a lot of major aspects happening here, some big changes. On Monday, Venus is at the last degree of Virgo, a sense of urgency, but this is also the eclipse degree where we had that solar eclipse in Virgo. So Venus is activating that on Monday. There could be something serious showing that's connected to eclipses for the future, a big change. This is kind of going to be a change for relationships and general money and finances. I'm thinking that there's going to be some sort of a dynamic change by next week with the markets based on this week of what happened. Yeah, looking at the markets right now, there's a lot of red going on. Things are down so far today. But I think that this will eventually be a change. Well, it's just a sense of urgency for something to be ending. And because that's the eclipse degree, it's more powerful than normal. So significant dynamics with relationships, people, work stuff by next week for people, and money, resources, changing dynamics in some way here. Now we do have some easier aspects as well. The moon is trine Mars on Monday, so that gives people a good outlet for activity, feeling more empowered, driven. It's still kind of more private though, what people are doing and how people are feeling. Plus the moon is approaching Jupiter. That tends to amp up feelings and emotions, usually on a more positive level, how people are feeling more supported or more inspired. But again, it's on a home, family level, more inward level, private. And the moon is also making aspects to the nodes of fate. So Monday, very fateful, destined, karmic because of the eclipse degree of what's playing out in the world. Now we do have, this is also the last quarter moon though, so we have a mixed bag here because the moon is also square the sun. And this is typically showing a challenge for the lunar cycle. Last quarter moon is the crisis in consciousness phase. How people are feeling, they have to work something out. But it also, the fact that the sun is being ruled by Venus at this last critical degree of an ending. The moon is in its home sign, strong, doesn't go anywhere else besides next to Jupiter. So people have to work something out in their consciousness, in their head, about what's going on, how they feel about something, or some new development that could be happening on Monday could begin to change a dynamic for people, and they have to kind of sort it all out in their head. But usually it's a little bit of a challenge. It's not a time where we necessarily have to force our way through it. It's okay to kind of step back, take it easy. Don't push too hard on Monday, especially midday, around late morning through the afternoon hours. Kind of take it easy, and just kind of process what's going on rather than forcing your will or pushing too hard for something. Sometimes there can be a few obstacles, challenges midday for Monday with this. Sometimes people aren't always cooperative, or it could just be on a personal level. It could be some sort of an emotional challenge for people in some way. Some people, not everybody. So if you have personal planets around 20 degrees of the cardinal signs, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or Aries, then you could be wrapped up into this. But it could be in the background no matter what, even if you don't have personal planets here. And then, Venus is going to change signs as the day goes on. And there's a lot of changes, it feels like, for the second half of the day. Remember, this is also the day that Pluto is stationing direct, so it's extra powerful, but it's been powerful all week long leading to this point. It'll continue to be powerful all next week. So the group, the community is very intense. Politics are extremely intense, transformative. Transformation is in the air. It feels like there is major changes taking place in the world, by next week of what this is talking about. And as the day goes on, the second half of the day, Venus changes signs into Libra. Now, this is where Venus is very strong. It's in its home sign, and it's connecting on the world dynamic of this grand trine that all of the planets have been moving through one by one. Venus is the last planet to come through here. So it's like another step of this world restructuring itself, world dynamics and what's happening. So I would imagine it will affect the market. It will affect other things happening around the world, around relationships, countries, nations, and things like that. I'm thinking that the full moon, the effects of the full moon will normally play out within 2 weeks until the new moon. So this could also be a part of the dynamic of the full moon in Aries and talking about peace deals and things that could be showing too within this next week here. But this is where now relationships want to be stronger. They want to be more compromising, more diplomatic, more graceful. This makes the sun a lot stronger now because the sun is also debilitated in Libra. It's opposite of Aries, where it's exalted in its fallen position. And so this is going to help out the sun a lot here with relationships, and just showing relationships can start to change for the better. But there's still going to be a moment here for the first part of next week, including Monday, when Venus is connecting to all of the outer planets. There has to still be a lot of adjustments that are taking place. So Venus opposing Neptune still shows something isn't fully clear yet, but it's beginning to change. So I think as the week goes on, you'll see more and more of those changes. At first, there could be a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of confusion. We don't look at this Venus-Neptune in the same way that we would look at Neptune in Pisces, like super romantic and all that. This is in opposition to Neptune in a war sign. It's a little bit different than the Neptune we've been dealing with for the past 14 years. So we'll get more and more into that new interpretation as we go for the next 14 years. But in the meantime, I do think that this is better for diplomacy and compromise and better balance with what's happening. And then Venus is also, Venus will make the other aspects to a grand trine with Pluto and Uranus by Tuesday when I come back for next week's report. But we also have the moon squaring Chiron. So again, as the moon approaches Jupiter, so the moon is with Jupiter squaring Chiron. Again, now that Jupiter is within orb, a really tight orb of the square to Chiron, I do believe that this week into next week, it's really activating a lot of sensitivity for people on some personal level about how they're feeling about the self. And especially if you have a personal planet where Chiron is in your chart. So Chiron is going from 26 degrees to 22 degrees of Aries before it goes back through all those degrees and moves forward into new territory next year. But right now it's at 25 degrees, and that's where Jupiter will reach as well and square that point. So people that have 25, 24 degrees of Aries are really being affected by this Chiron. Now, that happens every 49 to 50 years roughly, but it doesn't always necessarily show some major event. It could be subtle, internal, private stuff that's being highlighted. Some sensitivities from the past could be highlighted for people, depending on if you do have a personal planet like the sun or Venus or the moon or Mercury, Mars right there, then you could really be, affected. And it's more than just a one-day thing. This is all of 2025 into 2026 in a rare cycle. But the moon and Jupiter are really activating that for October and November. And yeah, Pluto station direct, extra powerful, extra intense, transformative with group, friends, community, power struggles within community. If you have a personal planet around 1 through 3 degrees of Aquarius, you're really under this once-in-a-lifetime Pluto transit that you've already been under for the last year and a half, and you're going to feel another round of this intensity as Pluto stations direct on one of your personal planets. So if you have the sun right there between 1 and 3 degrees of Aquarius, your character, your identity, your purpose is going through a once-in-a-lifetime transformation in this Pluto transit. So it all depends on the planet, on what it is for you. If it's your moon, it all depends on what those planets roll in your chart as well, but you're really under it, and you're going to feel the intensity this week and next week probably as Pluto stations. But generally it's about the group and the community and politics and these cities that are going through a lot of political group activity and things like that. And then the moon, the moon is with Jupiter all day on Monday, so I want to say that that's positive in a lot of ways. Plus Venus is now stronger. So now we have the 2 best planets in strength. Venus is in a very strong position of Libra. At first, I think we still have to get through this adjustment. I think it's going to take a few days for Venus to really show the best of the best, but we still technically have an exalted Jupiter. The moon is strong. Venus is strong. Mars is strong. So by next week, we actually have a lot of strong positions. The sun is one of the only ones that's really weak here, but it's being rolled by a strong Venus now. So that tends to show we have more opportunity. When we have strong positions, we have the resources, we have what we need to get the job done and accomplish a lot more. So a lot more strength, a lot more power for everybody by next week. And then the moon with Jupiter, it can show big feelings, big emotions, big needs for good or bad, but it's usually on more of a positive. Even though there's that square to Chiron, there's that something under the surface that is still sensitive for people, but on the outer level, it's much more powerful and abundant. It feels like generous needs could be met here for some people, feeling like you could get what you need. Plus the trine to Saturn feels more emotionally supportive as well from authority figures or from emotional stability. So I feel like something could be turning the corner for the better by next week, even though Pluto is stationary direct. It's very powerful and amplified and intense, but a lot of powerful positions here by next week. All right, so that's what I have for you. Leave a comment. Let me know how you're doing. And thanks for watching. I wish you the best. Take good care.